Okay, great. So this week, week 5, we're coming up on the halfway mark for the internship, which is crazy and exciting. The summer is just flying by. But so today we're going to do our project, our background presentations. And Tyler, we can just do yours virtually. I can have you share your screen so that if you have anything to share, that's not required. And so we'll do those today. So with that is your annotated bibliographies are also due today. So I'll be taking a look at those on the drive and giving you any feedback, anything I think you should add or anything of note. And then your project summary. So I'll click on this to show you. I just realized, can you see this, Tyler? Did it? Okay. So if you click on that through the agenda, this is going to be your final report for your projects. So what I want everyone to do for next week is just the summary portion. So this should be similar to your proposal, but a little bit more like holistic. So your proposal is more directed towards the kind of why you're doing what you're doing and what need it's filling for the organization. And the summary is a little bit more broad of like, this is what the project is about and like what it involves. So, and that should be pretty short. So 3 to 5 sentences, 150 words. So that is a pretty concise summary of your project, kind of like a movie description on the back of the package, like as short as you can make it that like really just gets all the information in there. So that'll be due next week. And then we're kind of in the thick of it now. So we've kind of exited out of like background info stage and like preparing. And now you should be really moving forward with implementing your plan and any action items that you have and partners you plan to reach out to, things like that. This is kind of like starting to get into the meat and potatoes of the program. So with that, we don't have as many assignments like with between us. It's more autonomous for you guys to like keep yourself on track and be working on things, and we'll continue to check in every week. So okay, here we go. So the blog post is the next thing that everyone will have to be thinking about. And then Macy, I know you're the next coming newsletter, so we can talk about that. But the blog post is your rough draft is due July 10th, which sounds far away, but it's only like 3 weeks away. So start thinking about that, what your topics for the blog post will be. I'm hoping that you guys have those in mind for today, but if not today, within the next couple of days, make sure to send me what your topic is going to be. And it should be related to your project, but not necessarily like, this is my project. It should be like, this is why wet meadow restoration is like important, like, or something along those kind of lines, like explaining an element of your project, like to the broader public. So that should be pretty simple to kind of nail down a topic for this week. And then just keep that in mind that you'll have to start working on that. I went like this, like the mouse was over here. And then, yeah, we have kind of a break in terms of assignments until a little closer to the end so that you guys have good time to be working on your projects and meeting with your staff mentors and doing what you need to do. So we'll still be checking in every week like we do. And that'll be a good chance for you guys to ask questions or update me on anything that you need help with. So that's kind of where we're at. If anyone needs a refresher on blog post or next generation newsletter, all of that is if you click on the link, and the guidelines are all on that second page. And I think what's most helpful is just looking at the examples for the blogs, and then same for next generation newsletter. Isabella did a really good job. So I added hers to the list of examples on the bottom here. So, and if you have any questions with any of this, of course, definitely reach out to me also. And as you get your topic, you can just go ahead and populate it in here. So just fill out this column right here with your topic or your title or whatever you specifically want to talk about. So that's really that. And then I know some people have been using the project tracking and some haven't. I think it's a good tool. Is this the wrong document? Okay.
Oh, I didn't even, I just copied one.
But that's okay. That's totally okay. I just realized we still have Ellie in here. So yeah, I think this is a really nice way to keep track. And the other thing that is good about it is it helps me see where you guys are. So if then I can kind of step in and help move anything along that maybe you're stuck on. It's a good way for me to kind of see what you guys are up to also. But it's not required, but I do think it's a good tool.
I need to remember that.
I know. It's like I had to go through a transition from like writing everything to like starting to use my computer. And if that doesn't work for you, it's okay. I just want to make sure everybody is staying on task and has enough work to be doing. And I haven't really been checking everyone's hours because that's not necessarily like something that I pay attention to. But if you're like struggling to find hours or anything like that, let me know, because we do want you guys to be working at least 15 hours a week. And again, you guys probably maybe are, but I'm just throwing this out there. Definitely don't hesitate to ask me if you have questions about hours or anything you should be working on or things like that. So yeah, I say now we'll jump into the background presentations, and then just as a heads up for the rest of the meeting, we'll share our presentations about our projects, and then at 11, Ashley is going to come and talk to us about the Climate Action Plan Collaborative, which will be a really good intro because this Wednesday is the open house, and we should all be going to that if we're around. Because it's really important. And it's going to be an exciting event, and there's going to be like food, and they'll be giving out nice pint glasses, and I think it'll be a really important event for us to support and go to. So that's going to be Wednesday at 5:30 at CMC. And I'm pretty sure it's like a 2-hour window, and you can kind of come and go, is my understanding. I don't know if that's true, but all of YVSC will be there, and we're all being told to bring as many friends as possible. So if you know anyone else in town, any other young people, definitely bring folks that live here, bring your parents. I think this is important for everyone to be involved in. So anyway, Ashley's going to come and talk about that, and then kind of do her background spiel like some of the other staff members have done for us. And then Ryan is also going to come and give a little bit of his background as well. And then we'll be done for the day. But there's a lot of things going on coming up, so I wanted to highlight some of that over here in the events section. So public open house, of course, this week. There's still zero waste events. There's one coming up. I need to double check if it's this Friday or Saturday, but there's a few of those while you guys are here doing your internship. If you want to get paid for your event and go to one of those, you can do that. There's also seedling surveys that we're going to do for Climate Crew in early July. So if that's of interest to you, we're going to be going over to the Silver Creek fire burn area and essentially surveying for regeneration to see how that area is naturally doing. And then, of course, Insight, the art fundraiser, is going to be on July 9th, and you guys are all definitely encouraged to come to that too.
Yeah, the only thing with that is it $75 and like go? I was wondering how that works. Like
we don't have to pay that because we're staff. So okay. Yeah, if you're interested in the art fundraiser, yeah. Like an entire yeah, no, $75 is steep. So yeah, it would not cost money for you guys if you were interested in coming to the fundraiser. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good point.
Would we need like tickets, or like should we get tickets from you guys or anything, or can we just show up to that?
I'll ask Kate, but as staff, you should be good in the clear to go to that for free, because that's what all of us are doing. Okay. But I will double check with her if she wants us to like still register or anything like that. That's a good point. I don't have my notebook. Make a note for myself to do
I can remind you.
Okay, I got it. Okay. So yeah, those are kind of the main things coming up and ways that you guys can all get involved. Just a reminder, we all need to attend 2 events and then make sure you're also considering when you're going to do your 4 shadowing hours. And these are kind of best represented in like a meeting, like with partners, or if like if Ryan is going out to, you know, survey or do maintenance, things like that would count for shadowing hours. Or if Ashley is going to, you know, a CAP meeting with one of the working groups, like that would be a good shadowing experience.
Sure, is if Wednesday was okay for me to shadow. Is that okay?
For the open house?
Yeah. Or do you think it would be better if I went with like went to a meeting with her?
I would consider the open house to be more of an event okay, rather than, so it can count towards your events. Okay. I would say not necessarily shadowing hours. Okay. But yeah. So yeah, just wanted to keep that in mind. And then also the week of July 4th, does anyone have plans for that like weekend? Because it's like the 4th is on a Tuesday. And so I'm wondering if people are going to be like gone on that Monday, if we should maybe do our meeting on Wednesday that week. Does anyone have any plans?
I don't have any plans.
Okay. Tyler, are you around?
Yeah, I should be around.
Okay, cool. So I'll have to see what Chloe's up to. I was considering, since that week is the seedling survey, so I have to work Saturday that week. So I was considering letting us just be not off. I can't tell you that it's off because we're technically open as an organization, but I was considering taking Monday off since I have to work Saturday that week, and thought maybe we could just do the intern meeting on Wednesday, but I don't know if that works for everyone's schedule.
I would have to see about Wednesday, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we can just keep that conversation open.
Yeah, okay, great.
Because I can always come in for the intern meeting and then take the rest of the day off if I work Saturday. So for now, we'll just leave it on the 3rd then. And then I'm going to, so we're going to do kickball, and I'm going to reserve the field for that, I think, on the 17th. So if anything changes, I'll let you know, but I'll be sending everyone a calendar invite for our staff fun day. So I think it'll be really fun. We've never done kickball before, and I think it sounds like a good time. So should be good. So that'll be coming up in July. And I think that's mostly it. Oh, last thing. So next week is our midterm checkpoint, and we do reviews for that midterm. So I'll want everybody to schedule like a 30-minute meeting with me for next week. So I'll come with like just some questions. I'm going to check in with your staff mentors and just get some feedback, and also just ask you guys how you're doing. Pretty casual, just to check in and have a touch point with all of you individually about everything. So that'll be next week. So make sure to maybe look at your calendars and come up with a few times, and then contact me, and we'll set something up. So sometime this week, try to plan those with me. And that's it. So we will now jump into doing our background presentations, and I will leave it up to you guys who would like to go first.
I don't mind. Okay, either way, yeah. Okay.
You want to go first, Isabella?
Yeah, let's get.
Okay, cool. Do you have a PowerPoint or anything that you wanted to share, or are you just gonna talk?
Do you have a PowerPoint? It's on under my assignments tab.
Yeah,
so
I can just.
You can just click through it if you like.
Great. Okay, awesome. That's okay.
Awesome.
And then Tyler, can you hear Isabella?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh, awesome. I'll just go. Oh, hi, Tyler. Oh, right. Okay. I'm gonna come listen to you. Okay. Musical chairs.
Yeah.
All righty. Okay, so project proposal. Already discussed this, but just for background, so I'm preparing communications for the public open house on Wednesday. And then so Ashley's going to talk about that with us today. And then afterwards, I'm going to start creating surveys and going out to the public and to events and finding a way to meaningfully engage with the 20 to 40-year-old demographic, learn what communication tools are the most effective. And this is important because it's been really hard to involve the general public in this age group. So I studied just looked over the Routt County Climate Action Plan. It just goes over the main priority sectors: energy, waste, transportation, land use, and economy. Again, I won't go too into that because I know Ashley's gonna go over that today, but I just wanted to refresh myself on that before I go into this open house. I really like that. It's a great plan. I recommend everyone looking at the document because it's actually really nicely organized, and the recommendations all provide like actions and then like how to perform those actions. So I thought it was like really, really nicely put together. Oops, I skipped one. Okay, so I looked over a study. It just happened to be in Australia, and about some of the barriers that come with community engagement. So poorly designed and implemented strategies can be seen as ineffective and a waste of public money, time, and resources. People think that it's a way to put on the cost to local communities. People also think that the majority of people are too selfish to actually do anything about climate action. So that's one of the barriers that I think that's the biggest one. People don't really care because they think it's just like too hard, I guess. So successful engagement looks like understanding your community and their values, also appropriate communication and having a purpose of why you're doing something. That could be clearly communicated. And then this is important because it's good to look at other countries and what they're doing for climate action and what kind of engagement they're looking into. So that's why I looked into that. I looked into why language is important if I'm going to be communicating with the public. So using alarmism or using scary or negative words when it comes to communicating climate change and climate action, it could be very daunting because people see like, oh, the world's going to end if we keep doing this. It's like, okay, well, I'll be dead in 50 years, so it doesn't matter for me. That could be a bad way to get the point across. I like that. This kind of goes along with that TED Talk that we watched the other day with like the stories and everything, like using metaphors and incorporating them into stories really is engaging and more receptive for people. And then just using words when we're talking about a lot of scientific things, it's kind of hard for people to understand and also different languages, different cultures have different meanings of words. So just the way we like use them, I guess. Yeah, so this is important because, we just want to have the most effective way to communicate with people. And then I just did some research on how to design a survey. I never really have done it before. I just have had ideas. So I just wanted to look into what the best ways to do it. I think I'm going to do a lot of mostly internet questionnaires, maybe some phone calls, and if I go out and do in-person outreach, then that'll look like face-to-face interviews, which I think will give the best feedback because I'll be right there. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Good job.
I don't know how to get out of that.
But okay, here I'll quit out of this. Awesome, good job. Thanks for sharing all your background information that you've been gathering. I think this is a really awesome way to support your project. Comparing what some other governments are doing, things like that. Successes and failures are definitely important. Window open. I feel like they always mow the grass during this meeting. So yeah, I think that was great background. I think, and I know that you mentioned this, that Ashley's going to go into the CAP project, but when you do your final presentation, definitely explain a little bit more about what the CAP is and what the collaborative is, and kind of like their goal and what that function is. I know today Ashley's going to talk about it, so that's why you didn't go into it, but that'll be a big piece of explaining your project in the future. But yeah, really, really good job. Thanks. Did you have a visual, or you're just going to talk?
I have something I'm going to pass around. So
okay, great. Awesome.
Honestly, it's not essential that you see it either. I just think it's helpful.
Okay.
So if I don't see it, it's no big deal.
Okay. Well, here I'm gonna go back to normal view so that Taylor can see.
So I know we've all kind of gone over our presentations or our projects at this point, but just to review, mine is surrounding wet meadow restorations, which went on last year and we're going to continue with this year and hopefully into the future. And one of the big pieces of that the organization thinks is important in implementing, and that's been so far missing, is a monitoring system. And so these wet meadows are being restored in California Park, which is just north of Hayden. And they're a really important ecosystem because they, I was a little confused about what a wet meadow is. So I'll just say it's a type of wetland, and it fluctuates throughout the year. So as like snow melts off, you get like what looks like a full wetland, but then in other parts of the year, it might be dried up. But it is a wetland in the sense that it will kind of span over a lot of distance, and it's not like condensed to like a stream per se. And one of the issues that's been going on in Cal Park and goes on in a lot of places is that erosion makes it so that a wet meadow, all the water is condensed into a stream, which destroys the wet meadow ecosystem. And wet meadows are really important to a lot of animals, like elk and a lot of birds, and particularly in Cal Park, sage grouse depend on that ecosystem, and we've had numbers of sage grouse dropping, and that's something that's a big concern for the state. And so because of that, the state is supporting and helping us to figure out the best method to restore these ecosystems. So I kind of went over a lot of the benefits of the restoration, but it also does increase a lot of vegetation density, which can be important. And there's a lot of wetland plants that are obligate species and depend on it being a wetland and cannot survive as the ecosystem is changing. It also is really important because it's a great way to minimize erosion and actually not just like stop erosion, but help to fix some of the erosion that's already happened. By slowing down the water, we are able to, well, I should back up. I'm going to start with saying that the wet meadow restoration is happening by using low technology, high process Zedic structures. So that is a really fancy way of saying that we are putting in these one rock dams. So they are just like one rock thick at the bottom of the kind of streams that have been built, that have been kind of eroded in, and they help to slow the water. And by slowing the water will drop the sediment that it's carrying and help to solve some of that erosion, and slowly over time help to restore the wet meadow. And so that's what I have here, is just a picture of that one rock dam that I think is helpful in picturing what we are actually going to be doing. And by restoring it, we're also creating a lot more drought resiliency, because in seasons when we don't get as much water as we've had, for instance, this year, the wet meadows are important to kind of holding that water for a time. And so moving on to the monitoring system, which is specifically what I'll be working on, is it can be really challenging for us to, or for these types of restorations to be monitored. And it seems like one of the big failings in the past with other projects has been there hasn't been a great way of monitoring them. So it's hard to really gauge how effective they actually have been. And so in recent years, there's been a shift towards making sure that there's a really structured, well-implemented plan for monitoring. And there's been a lot of third parties that have come in and observed and monitored to find out the effectiveness of different restoration projects, which was a lot of what my annotated bibliography was looking at. And there's a couple different ways of doing it. One way that I saw a lot in my research for this was satellite sensing. So they take satellite pictures that are publicly available, and those satellite pictures, they're able to take the saturation of color to figure out how, depending on how green that area is, it tells them the vegetation density. And so they're able to take those photos from before the treatment of the wet meadow to after, to see how that has brought up the vegetation density. And then another way, and I think this is the way that we will be doing it, is by looking at the biodiversity and looking at the species that are present. And a lot of those species, like I said, were wetland obligate species. So if we're able to see increases in the numbers of those obligate species in an area, it will indicate for us that the wet meadow is being restored. And so that right now is the plan. And the other important piece of it is to kind of cross-reference those species that we're using as indicators with species that are essential to the sage grouse, because a lot of the funding that goes toward wet meadow restorations and a lot of the grants that we have the opportunity to apply for surround helping to bring back up the populations of sage grouse. Yeah, and that's everything.
That's awesome.
That's so interesting.
Great.
That sounds like so much fun.
Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that was a really, really, really nice, thorough overview of what your project is and why, kind of the background, and a good explanation of what kind of things you're looking into. And yeah, I think that that's a really awesome place to start with all your research. I think one thing that will be a challenge for us is, none of us are like expert plant identifiers. So I think that'll be challenging for us in terms of like going out into the field and doing these monitoring protocols, is like the actual collection and implementation is harder than setting up the framework. So that'll probably be like a realistic piece that we look into maybe down the road or toward the end of your internship or something, as the project really starts to take form. So yeah, but I think that you've hit it on the head. I think that biodiversity is definitely the best way that we can tell if something is being successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
Probably also some kind of like moisture monitoring, I would imagine, but I could be totally wrong on that.
Yeah, me and Ryan have been talking about it, and it's been really interesting to kind of like pair both like the research that you do for the annotated bibliography of like these published studies that have been so thorough and had so many resources and they're fascinating, but then like taking those and like talking around and pairing back and being like what's realistic and what's something that we not only would do this year and next year, but hopefully years and years down the line we'd be able to continue to do it in a protocol that like, you know, we actually have the time and the resources to do. So that's been sort of, I don't think we have like all the answers for that yet, but it's been interesting to think about.
Yeah, just starting to brainstorm and stuff is really just the first step. So thanks for doing all that great research and good job. And Tyler, do you have a PowerPoint or are you just gonna talk?
Yeah, I have a PowerPoint.
Okay, awesome. Then I can stop sharing my screen, or have I already stopped sharing my screen? I think I'm actually not sharing right now. So yeah, I think whenever you are ready, you can share your screen and awesome.
Let me do this. Like the controls are like blocking the tabs. All right. There. Can you see that?
Yep, that's perfect.
So my project is like the energy and transportation, that kind of stuff. So from 2016 to today, there's been nearly 400 energy assessments. And like with these assessments, they took like heat guns and went to people's houses, saw like, oh, your windows aren't really sealed well, so you're losing energy here. Same with like doors and other things. And so they kind of told like homeowners, here's where you're losing energy efficiency. And then also recommended what kind of retrofits to do. So after that, nothing really came of it. But now for my project, I'm going to be reaching back out to them and seeing like, what all did you do? How much did it cost? All the different data that I can gather from them. And so then I'll be able to calculate all the different like savings, such as carbon, electrical cost savings, and bring the findings to the local government to go request funding. Because just recently, one of the energy companies, I can't remember the name, in Steamboat, they used to like help pay for these assessments, but recently stopped. And so we're trying to prove that like these are helpful and like people need these. So for my research, I kind of just looked into like all the different like hindrances, everything I could kind of find about energy efficiency in homes. Um, and so we found like this first one by Chen is about the likelihood of someone actually doing their retrofit, and what kind of like hindrances. A big one was a lack of the knowledge of subsidies. So like I learned from that, if we are able to help pay for this, we need to let people know that we're helping pay for them. And then overall cost obviously is a pretty big one. The next article kind of looked into heat pumps, which is like a kind of a substitute for a furnace in the home to heat and cool your home. And so this article kind of looked into how we can use the seasons, like the warm season and the like summer and cold, to more efficiently cool the house or heat it. Uh, Next one was just kind of like an add-on, just to like keep in mind that like as appliances get better and better, um, they're taking more and more energy. So we kind of need to account for that when we're looking at solar, which is a second kind of part of my project. This next one, it kind of looked into the difference in power usage between apartment buildings and freestanding homes, because it's important to distinguish how like apartment complex their kind of energy efficiency versus a freestanding home. And it found that apartment complexes are more energy efficient. The next one, it found the top hindrances for retrofits. These are pretty important because I'm going to be talking to all these people, and if they didn't do the retrofits, it's important to know why. And so this kind of gave me an idea about all the different possible reasons why not. Obviously, this included like expense, the time to actually build it, and then if they own the home. And then this last one, I believe, looked at the home prices after getting a green certification. I don't know if we do that here, but kind of just went into like it increases the home value if you're can prove that you're more energy efficient. So to summarize, this research really gave me a lot of insight into the real world applications that I'll be dealing with in my project. And do you have any questions?
Any have questions?
So will you be like, are you like researching how to like help people like reduce their like energy waste, or I think I just missed like the beginning part of like your project, I guess.
Yeah. So like what I'll be doing is they've already had these assessments and professionals went in and said, like, here's exactly what you need. Like you need a new furnace, you need a new insulation. And so that's like their part. And they put all this into a big database called Salesforce that I'll be using. And it's more my job to be like, did you actually implement that? And then figure out how much it costs and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Good job, Tyler. I was curious if you found any research kind of expressing like, I know you found a lot about like barriers and kind of like what people identify as like issues to decrease or increasing efficiency, but did you find anything about like how people are measuring that success moving forward, like after the assessment, like if there was any information about statistics of people that actually did go through with retrofits and then had success?
Yeah, not really. Like the only one was with like green energy certification, how that increased the price of the homes.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's kind of just looking back at like your energy usage then versus now,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little bit harder to do because it's all from the company. It's kind of difficult to get your energy usage.
Yeah. Do you think that, so with you and Paul, are you guys going to reach back out to folks that had an initial assessment and then inquire if they ended up doing any retrofits and if they've noticed a change in order to get that information?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it because I was like, why don't we compare to because during the time of the retrofit, they got that kilowatt hours, how much energy usage,
Mhm.
but Paul was saying we very like be able to get their current power usage. So I think we're just kind of finding other kind of data points to use.
Okay, cool. Do you know what other data points he's thinking of? So he was saying you're not able to get their kilowatt usage.
No,
Okay, gotcha.
but there are like calculators built into this Salesforce database that that tells you like carbon savings, electric savings, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Macy has a question.
So you were saying like you'll help like try and figure out with the costs of everything. Are you gonna try and figure out like based on like making changes that might make your home more efficient, like the savings you'd have as far as like um your like electric bill and like costs like that? Or is that something that you can't get access to? That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. We're definitely able to tell like how much it costs to do the retrofit. because I think it's Energy Smart Colorado. They do a reimbursement for that kind of stuff. So we have all this money that's being told, like, here's how much they spent on that. And then I'm very sure, but not 100%, there is like a calculator that says with this change in XYZ, this is how much energy savings you're going to have.
Okay, that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's kind of like an estimate. I wonder why is kilowatt like usage for people's homes, is that like private information? Is that why
I'm
it's
pretty
not
sure it
accessible?
is. Yeah.
I
Like
mean,
I bet you can
makes
get it,
sense.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure somebody has access to it, but it makes sense, I
Yeah.
guess, that it's not public information. But
Yeah.
same time, it almost feels like it might as well be, like it would be
I
so
know. Yeah.
for us knowing how things are going. Yeah, it's like, and maybe if you were embarrassed about how much you were using, you would do something about it.
Yeah.
Not like putting your name to your bill.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tyler. Good job. Great
Yeah.
research on the background of that. And I'm sure Paul and you will come up with a good system, and you'll get a good flow of figuring out how best to analyze that and come up with some kind of answer there that you can do kind of broadly for all those people that have done assessments in the past. So
Yeah, for sure.
awesome. Great. And so Chloe I'm just gonna probably have her do her background presentation next week. Because she has her permaculture. Hi, Ashley. Or I'm assuming it's Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on in. So yeah, Chloe will do her presentation next week. So now we're gonna have Ashley set up. So if anyone, we'll take a quick break. I'm gonna stop recording this for a moment.
So it's that thing too, right?
Yes.
We'll enjoy that.
They plowed the roads like that week up until
did
that
you
day
screen share?
before that. And the property manager said they were going through 6-foot drifts.
Okay,
This big.
great. So then how
The
I
snow
got
is, I mean,
So yeah,
Last time you got snow, because were there any snow when everyone was sleeping?
it snowed a week ago Thursday. I was up there.
Wow, yeah.
so that, oh gosh, yeah.
But we got her all disassembled.
That's all good.
you just don't have to look
Look at myself
here.
You can't see yourself. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
saddle.
So that.
That'd be less distracting. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
So we disassembled all of that on the contract.
Yeah. No,
This is
perfect.
Then we'll rebuild it next year.
Hey, awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. Today, Ashley is gonna talk a little bit about CAP stuff just to get everyone more up to speed, especially in lieu of the public open house coming up on Wednesday. So without further ado, I will let Ashley take it away.
Right. So this presentation will look a little bit familiar on Wednesday because it's mostly the presentation that Dale will be giving then. But I did add some more detailed slides on sort of the recommendations and the process there. So, and then I'll just kind of go between these screens. Oh, that's good. All right. Okay. And pardon me, but I'm going to read my script because that's just how I do it for learning how to give public presentations. Okay, me hearing. Okay. So, despite the record-breaking snowpack this past year, over the past 2 decades, Routt County has trended toward an earlier and more rapid snowpack runoff, increased frequency of river closures due to high water temperatures and low flow, and elevated severity of wildfires. In addition, according to a 2020 Washington Post study, Routt and Norfolk County are among a hotspot of warming, tracking over 2 times the national average temperature increases over the last century. Routt County's intergovernmental partners recognize that greenhouse gas emissions drive these changes in our regional climate and commissioned 2 greenhouse gas inventories in 2005 and 2018. In the 2018 study, commercial and residential buildings made up 54% of Routt County's carbon emissions, followed by transportation at 26% as the biggest sources of emissions. The studies helped identify the county's major sources of emissions and provided local governments with data to understand emission trends and chart a course for collective action in climate change, the catalyst for the creation of the Climate Action Plan. The CAP identifies strategies that reduce carbon emissions across energy, transportation, waste, land use, and economy sectors. If all the 22 strategies and associated actions are implemented successfully, Routt County is anticipated to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030 and 74% by 2050, as compared to the 2018 emissions baseline. The state of Colorado has even higher science-based climate targets of 50% emissions reductions by 2030 and 90% by 2050 from 2005 levels. So we believe Routt County's goals are achievable and necessary to do our part. The CAP strategies laid out in the Climate Action Plan are very general actions, but important overarching guardrails that can be taken to achieve our carbon emission goals. The recommendations you will be viewing today, or actually not today, detail more specific, prioritized, implementable actions such as policies and on-the-ground projects. Steps to implement the strategies that have already been identified in the CAP across energy, transportation, waste, land use, and energy sectors. Additionally, there are strategies listed under accountability that are the purview of the CAP Collaborative Board. Do you guys want me to read these strategies to you, or do you want to read them yourselves? All right, energy.
Yeah.
Increase adoption of renewable or other clean energy and fuel sources. Increase energy efficiency. Promote fuel switching, that is electrification. For transportation, improve safe and equitable multimodal access throughout each community to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Increase adoption of electrical vehicles by 20% of registered vehicles in Routt County are electric vehicles by 2030, and 95% are EVs or other non-carbon emission producing vehicles by 2050. Reduce single occupancy travel and engage in statewide policies and policy work. Waste, reduce the amount of solid waste disposed of in the landfill. Reduce waste diversion or increase waste diversion and support waste reduction initiatives at the state level. Land use, promote land management practices that increase carbon sequestration and storage across forests, wetlands, riparian corridors, and ag rangelands, and preserve carbon sinks, especially forests and wetlands, and designate future land use to maximize carbon sequestration. Land use needs to shorten that one, I think. It's a lot of words. Increase and support cross-boundary efforts to conserve and maintain natural lands and to promote resilience across the landscape within the county. Promote water conservation measures and reduce energy consumed in water production, distribution, and wastewater treatment. And promote compact development patterns to achieve more sustainable development and preserve natural land use types. Consume goods with lower carbon in the county. Consume goods with lower embedded carbon emissions. Develop, I'm going to talk a little bit more about these later. Develop green markets, expand base industries for regional self-reliance, enhance environmental sustainability efforts undertaken by business, and finally, for accountability, ensure adequate funding for the CAP, establish accountability mechanisms for the CAP, align with other community plans, and carry out educational programs in support of the CAP. In 2001, Routt County, the city of Steamboat Springs, and the towns of Hayden, Oak Creek, and Yampa adopted the Climate Action Plan and signed an intergovernmental agreement to develop the CAP Collaborative and to provide the financial resources to advance the Climate Action Plan. The collaborative creates an organizational structure to help facilitate regional decision-making and track execution of the CAP and associated greenhouse gas reduction. Pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement, local governments appointed one member and one alternate representing their representative governments, as well as 4 community board members to the collaborative board. In 2022, Yampa Valley Sustainability Council was selected as the program management entity for the collaborative board and working groups. In this role, we provide administrative and programmatic support and carry out communication activities for the collaborative board. Paul, Wynn, Tim, and Michelle all sit as technical experts on their respective working groups and have all been a driving force in getting the recommendations where they are today. The 5 of us meet at least twice a month in our huddle to discuss working group and board agendas and to make sure we are keeping the collaborative as a whole on track to meet its goals. Also in 2022, the board approved 10 to 15 technical experts for each of the 5 CAP working groups. The groups have been convening monthly since September to identify and develop actionable, high-impact recommendations needed to meet CAP carbon reduction goals and strategies across these 5 sectors. Additionally, the working groups provide guidance on projects, initiatives, and climate-related policies. Currently, 65 people are actively participating in the collaborative and have voluntarily invested over 1,400 hours into the process. The CAP board consists of 9 members, including 4 community members and a representative from each of the local government partners. Through regular monthly meetings, the board offers substantive expertise and critical stakeholder perspectives to its oversight role, representing the entire geographic scope of the project area to assure consistency, coordination, and integration across the county. Importantly, the board fulfills the accountability section of the CAP, helping to identify funding sources to ensure the CAP is adequately funded, developing metrics to monitor progress, aligning with other community plans, and carrying out educational programs and communications in support of the CAP. Per the IGA, the board also develops, approves, and provides oversight of policies, projects, and priorities that result in the implementation of the CAP. The CAP Collaborative has a team of diverse and dedicated working group members tasked with helping us meet our CAP goals. As mentioned earlier, in 2018, emissions from stationary energy, that is electricity, natural gas, wood, and propane, used in residential and commercial buildings and industrial facilities in Routt County generated 54% of the community's greenhouse gas emissions. The CAP energy goal is to reduce emissions from stationary by 82% by 2050. To reach this goal, a strong emphasis will need to be made on the transition to beneficial electrification and greening of the grid as soon as possible. Any new projects or policy decision that continues the use of natural gas will take us a step back from our emission reduction goals. A total ban on natural gas in new construction, as has been done in Crested Butte, would be the most effective way to get there. An energy sector recommendation does address minimizing outdoor use, but a more aggressive stance in the future is needed. In addition to identifying and prioritizing CAP energy recommendations, the Energy Working Group has also provided guidance to the CAP board on new net metering policies and have offered its energy consultation expertise to all CAP governmental partners as these partners move forward on new construction project and energy-related policies. Transportation represents the second largest source of emissions in Routt County at 26% of emissions generated in 2018. 2/3 of these are emissions generated from gasoline vehicles. Another quarter was generated from the use of diesel vehicles. In general, the county and its municipalities do not have the ability to significantly alter transportation activity within aviation and have limited influence over railways, and therefore have little control over emissions produced from these activities. For this reason, the strategies within the transportation sector for the CAP focus primarily on increasing access to multimodal transportation options and supporting the use of electric vehicles in the community, with the goal of reducing emissions from the transportation sector by 98% by 2050. We anticipate the majority of these emission savings will come from the transition to EVs throughout the community. Emissions from waste generated in Routt County comprise 7% of the community's greenhouse gases emissions in 2018. Nearly all, 94% of these emissions were generated from solid waste disposal. The goal of the waste sector is to reduce emissions from waste by 69% by 2050. In addition to developing waste recommendations, the Waste Working Group has lent their voice to waste-related decisions facing CAP governmental partners. Earlier this winter, the group sent a letter to City Council encouraging them to consider diversion and construction demolition debris to the greatest extent possible during the deconstruction of City Hall and construction of the new City Hall Fire Station complex. The city has pursued those recommendations and have made important sustainability efforts to recycle and divert their demolition waste. In late April, the results of a recycling drop sites feasibility study comprised by Routt County and the city of Steamboat Springs were released that recommended a countywide recycling center for drop-off collection of traditional recycles, food and yard waste, organics, and hard to recycle materials. This recommendation directly aligns with the CAP Waste Working Group recommendation, and the working group sent letters in support of this finding. The Community Recycling Center is a key step in implementing the CAP and puts the city and county on track to achieve CAP targets of 46% waste diverted by 2030. Routt County's agriculture community is an important part of the county's heritage and current day culture. Respect for the knowledge and work that ranchers and agricultural producers do every day, and working closely with these stakeholders is integral to the development and implementation of natural climate solutions on these lands. Emissions from agricultural activities and wildfires in 2018 resulted in 5% of Routt County's greenhouse gas emissions. All of these emissions were generated in unincorporated lands or in the most rural parts of the town. The majority of emissions came from manure management on ranches in the county, followed by emissions from forest fires. When writing the Climate Action Plan, Lotus Consulting did not add up any emission reductions in their calculations for land use, so there's an opportunity for land use recommendations to contribute to CAP carbon reduction goals. In Route County, the primary opportunities for natural climate solutions include forest management activities and rangeland and grassland management, particularly in collaboration with local ranching community. The land use working group includes staff from both county and city. Their involvement has supported the integration of CAP and land use goals into forthcoming updated development landscape and zoning codes. The strategies and actions within the economy sector do not have a direct emissions impact. However, these strategies are essential for ensuring that the entire county and local economy benefits from climate action work, and specifically that local businesses are supported to engage in climate action across the county. The CAP economy goal is to ensure that businesses have the support, resources, and information they need to be more sustainable, such as through the development of green purchasing programs and policies, and that there are mechanisms to support the development of new green markets and a trained and ready clean economy workforce. Key to the successful implementation of CAP economy goals will be the expansion of the Colorado Green Business Network of the Yampa Valley. As a regional partner of the state-level Colorado Green Business Network program, the Yampa Valley Green Business Program provides free technical assistance to and promotion and recognition of local businesses in Yampa Valley pursuing sustainability goals. The goal of the program is to make it easy to connect with funding, resources, and skills that make sustainability attainable across business sectors and size. We are excited to be at the final phase of the CAP recommendation process and sharing our recommendations with the public on Wednesday. The recommendations are a result of a 9-month process that began back in September. With guidance from the actions and tactics identified in the CAP, the working groups began identifying regional climate policies, programs, and initiatives currently underway. While some of these identified initiatives needed further support and development, others reflect the commitment Route County has already made to climate action. The next step was to perform a gap analysis. What strategies and actions in the climate action plan were not being realized? And what important strategies and actions did the plan possibly miss, but are crucial to reaching Route County's climate goals? From there, each of the working groups developed lists of 15 to 20 recommendations. To help the working groups prioritize recommendations and identify big wins, strategies that would significantly contribute to carbon reduction, the group set a 5-year time period for implementation and developed criteria for evaluating recommendations based on the following. Greenhouse gas reduction potential includes avoided emissions compared to the baseline and assessed through 2050 in line with CAP. Co-benefits assess benefits such as improvements to public health, environmental quality, wildlife, and other public values. Implementation costs include upfront and ongoing, which can be cost savings, costs for government action, and end costs to consumers and public. Avoided costs can also be considered here. Political barriers. This includes things like public opposition, vested interest groups, job impacts, and finally, ease of implementation. Is action already planned, such as building code updates, a clear agency willing to proceed, funding in place or clearly identified, and synergy with other government actions making adoption more likely. A scoring sheet was set up such that the higher the total number, the higher the overall ranking. If something is easy to implement, it would get a high score, 15 points. The political barrier and implementation cost criteria were flipped here. If there is potential for a lot of public opposition, then the barrier for implementation would be high, which in this case results in a lower score of 5 points. Ultimately, this process was not about the individual score as a ranking tool, but a tool to show the CAP board how recommendations fit into different categories and to get consensus among the working groups on these evaluations. To provide some uniformity to the recommendations, our YBSC technical experts devised a structure to capture information that would be relevant to the board and ultimate government decision makers. I can pass around a transportation recommendation for reference. Recommendation is pretty straightforward. CAP strategy and action links the recommendations to strategies, actions, and tactics already identified in the CAP or highlights a gap in the CAP. Description provides a little background and why the recommendation has been prioritized. The assessment includes a graph of the applied criteria, high, medium, and low ranking, and the notes and assumptions used to arrive at that ranking. Lead implementers are those identified who are primarily responsible for making the recommendation happen. Partners are the groups and organizations that can support implementation. Timeframe to begin implementation accounts for a 5-year period of implementation, but there are a number of recommendations that can be implemented immediately. Cost estimate. While important for decision makers, it has been a little harder to quantify for many of the recommendations. Estimates were made, but more research may be needed for this component moving forward. Finally, potential funding sources list organization and resources that currently or may soon be offering funding to support this recommendation. On April 27, all working group members convened to peer review priority recommendations. The meeting provided a valuable opportunity for working group members to learn from each other, identify synergies across the recommendations, and provide constructive feedback. The meeting was also a chance to celebrate the achievements and commitment of the CAP collaborative members to date. With revised recommendations in hand, the working groups presented their findings to the CAP board on May 26th for review. Final board comments were received and integrated, and the recommendations are now ready for public comment at the Wednesday's open house. Looking ahead, public comments will be reviewed and a finalized list of recommendations will be shared with the CAP board at their next meeting. The CAP board will bring finalized recommendations to CAP governmental partners in time for fiscal year 2024 budget discussions. Working groups will move to quarterly meetings to continue to provide guidance on current projects and climate-related policies. The CAP board will continue to meet monthly to oversee CAP recommendation implementation. The slide is more for the general public since you guys probably do this, but I'll end up with saying how you can stay involved. An essential goal of the collaborative is to increase public understanding of the regional climate threats we currently face and the opportunities and solutions the collaborative is bringing forward to address these challenges. The CAP website contains the most up-to-date information on the collaborative. You can learn more about collaborative members, read board's minutes and working group summaries, catch up on CAP-related news, access CAP resources like the Climate Action Plan and Greenhouse Gas Inventory, and learn about upcoming events. If you haven't already, I encourage you to sign up for our monthly newsletter. The newsletter includes climate wins happening in Routt County and opportunities for individuals to take action. For those on social media, I invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and to share these with your friends so that we can continue the climate conversation. Email info@routclimateaction.com with any questions or comments. Support climate policies and hold decision makers accountable. And finally, volunteer. Consider joining Yampa Valley Sustainable Council's Yampa Valley Climate Crew or plant some trees along the Yampa River at a Reacher event. Taking a proactive stance on climate change through implementing the Climate Action Plan will allow Routt County to be better prepared for anticipated changes in the regional climate and the impact those changes will have on citizens, landowners, and businesses. Implementing the CAP as a guide to decision-making and action sets the county on a course to a lower emission future that aligns with state and federal goals and funding sources. Additionally, having this plan in place opens up access for the county, municipalities, and partner organizations to grants and other funding and technical assistance resources that currently or may soon be available at the state and federal level. Anchored in an intergovernmental agreement, the collaborative also represents a commitment by local government partners to real action to address the effects of climate change in our community. By working together, residents, governments, and all other stakeholders can help reduce our carbon footprint and ensure Routt County remains a vibrant and thriving community for years to come. What we do locally counts and your actions matter.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
For the land use sector, so it's only focused on end users for land use?
So there's land management, so it's natural climate solutions, and then there's also areas. The only part of the water component of it is energy use for water uses, so like outdoor watering and things like that. But it's primarily land management.
But like, does that land management only fall on private land, or are we talking about?
No, I mean a lot of Routt County is the countywide ownership and Forest Service, so working with state Forest Service.
So it's all those together.
Yeah, so it's working. So that one actually does a lot more, I think. Yeah. With collaborating with statewide organizations.
Okay.
As well.
The title at the top made it seem like it was mainly agricultural based. So I just wanted to clarify.
That's a good point. I noticed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is not much with water. I mean, that is kind of a gap of the CAP.
Well, I think even sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, even recognizing like US Forest Service lands and like land managers through that.
Yeah, because I think ag users are gonna feel called out that we're putting all the brunt of the reducing emissions.
Yeah,
for that
I mean,
sector on them.
like you see, like, you know, Carolina and Michael Woodbridge are on the board, so, or the working group. So like you see that they're involved, but just the title of the, or the description of the title is mainly ag focused.
Is that like this strategy?
Yeah, if we go back to that slide.
That's nice.
Too many apples.
Closely with ranchers and agricultural producers to develop and implement natural climate solutions.
Then maybe say like working closely with ranchers, agricultural producers, and
Public
land managers.
Land managers.
I would say work closely with land managers, period. Yeah. To develop and implement.
So just land managers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. It's helpful because I think we look at it, you know, all the time. It's not.
Good catch.
Yeah, right.
Very good.
And actually, land use is the one I like know the least about. Yeah.
Well, and the implementation to like increase, you know, expedite the rate of reforestation in upland forests, increase, you know, riparian, basically reforestation buffer. So it's moving across all different land types, and definitely it's going to take strong partnerships with U.S. Forest Service, Colorado State Forest Service, you know, government where possible, private landowners.
Can I see who's on the board for that one too? I'm just curious.
You mean the working group?
Or the working group, I always get those mixed up. Yeah. What is fungi?
Yeah.
Sounds
The
fun.
mushroom gathering.
Yeah, that's what I know.
I think she does like GIS type work.
Oh, okay.
Sure. Oh, is it Anne?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. She's like basically a modeler, but does really high level carbon modeling actually of like large scale reforestation.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I think that's a private entity, but she just finished her PhD.
Well, those are the folks that came to visit us about 9 months ago, those two ladies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Anne is, yeah. So she does really relevant, like big carbon modeling going forward.
While you're shamelessly plugging his volunteer program,
Yes.
could you put EV ambassadors in there?
Oh, yeah. I feel like we should be careful about how much YBSE plugging should we be doing.
Yeah, and
I can just do it.
yeah.
I mean, I can just say volunteer.
Yeah.
Let's take
Volunteer at YBSC events.
Or I didn't say why, just volunteer.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that, but
Gonna remain low.
Well, generic's okay, but I'm fine with name and name.
And I was curious too, at the very end with ways to get involved, are the working group sessions going to be open to the public? Or
I mean, they've technically always been open to the public. There's not opportunity for public comment. So people can always listen in, but we didn't intentionally try to advertise the working group needs not to.
Yeah, the goal is to stay focused, not distracted.
Yeah.
Will there be periods of public comment after this open house?
Yeah, so I'm gonna set those Google Forms that I set up for the working groups where anyone, and I'll create a page on the TAP website that links all these Google Forms, and it'll have the recommendation and a short description, and then it'll link to the sort of the 2-page what this thing is if people want more information, and then they just fill out those forms. It's just a Google form, so then I can collect all the comment, and so we could leave that up for a couple of weeks. We could leave it up for, you know, so there's, if people can't make this event, and people can zoom into the event, and I'll drop those links into the Zoom. But if people can't go Zoom or can't attend the event, they'll still have the opportunity to go to our website and provide their public comment. I decided against the community board because if it looks anything like our Facebook commentary, it might not be the most productive use of time and space. So yeah, so there will be time to capture public input.
And it's an interesting, there's an interesting opportunity to think about how we in this next phase move towards increased public engagement. And so the process to date has been really, you know, we would describe it as quite technocratic. And so it's been government-based. They brought in technical experts as the working group members to go through, closely read the CAP, develop implementation steps that are really geared towards government key agencies. And so it's been highly, you know, kind of sector expertise driven. And then now the point is, we all know that climate action takes the community buying into programs and building broad-based support for government leadership as it relates to climate work. And so that's really going to be an interesting place, I think, for YBSE to take a step back and put our YBSC hats back on and say like, how do we actually take this and then embed it in the community in really meaningful ways. So the public open house is a first launch of that. So we're creating a forum for public comment. And that will be, you know, a statement to elected officials and decision makers to say the public cares. Tons of people showed up. So all of you have to bring 10 people. Did everybody get that memo? No, and they cannot be in this group right now. Everyone has to bring 10 people. I'm getting there. So I'm working on my 10. But honestly, we want to get like a really good public showing because that will send a really nice signal to people that the community cares about climate work. And then the next phase will, you know, however the working groups, we're still really figuring out how they'll be engaged, but probably more of like an oversight or a check-in committee, but not monthly moving forward. So then how do we take it and make it a community opportunity to make climate action something that we're really proud of and that people know about and orient to.
Is there going to be an annual report?
Yes, there will be. Yeah, so that's part of our scope of work for the collaborative project management entity as we'll create an annual report. But yeah, so it's interesting, you know, as you kind of think about environmental planning and environmental processes, like this has been very technocratic, expert driven, and not community engaged really.
Yeah.
And so now, you know, how do we now meaningfully engage the community? And they might come up with new recommendations or additional things that support community engagement or green business programming. And so there's a lot of opportunity next. And it's, you know, I think it's an asset in our process that we have strong government, you know, foundation of it. They really wanted to be like, it's our idea, we want to move it forward, and that's great. So as opposed to having it just be a community thing where they're like asking. So I think we have really wonderful potential, but it'll be a great opportunity next to reach out and engage the community more.
I have a question. So what stage is this at with like the local governments? Like are they gonna vote to adopt it? Like, are we confident they're going to do that? What is
That's a $50 million question.
Yeah.
They've already adopted the plan.
They'll do everything that the plan says is, but the real struggle is gonna be funding stuff. Because this is not easy and it's not free. They're already struggling with that.
But they've like, have they said they're gonna adopt it?
They've already adopted it. Yeah.
All the governments have.
So they're
Even though
They've
it's not
adopted the
done.
plan and the
But
climate action. The climate
so
action
the way I see it is the plan said, here's our vision. Everybody's like, oh, that's great. And then it's like, how do we get there? Or here's what we have to do to get there. Oh, that's hard, expensive.
Okay.
Oh,
And
never mind.
Yeah.
Disability measures in the plan either.
Yeah.
So Michelle gets really mad at you if you don't do it. So.
That's You'll get nasty letters in the paper.
But the whole process has been, I mean, it's local government run. I mean, they're the core of the board, of the CAT board. So.
And we've done partner engagement meetings with our municipal partners to sort of keep them up to date on what we're doing and where we're at. But the next step will be to take these comments and recommendations to the board. The board ultimately decides. We think they're all going to get passed on to their municipal partners, and then what happens from there is still a little bit to be determined. So what we're trying to do is then now generate the public support so that the decision makers see that there is public support for these actions.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say different governments in the CAP intergovernment agreement have different levels of enthusiasm for what they need to do.
And also different level of needs, like
Yampa
might not need the same things that the city of Steamboat Springs needs. And so there's not an expectation that every municipality will adopt every recommendation, or even that they necessarily need to, but ideally all the recommendations will be adopted in some form, because that's the only way we're going to meet the goals that have been established with the climate action plan. And like I said, it's not even up to the level that the state of Colorado wants us all to be. But
is every town in Rock County signed on?
I don't know. What's Pittsburgh?
Three towns in the county.
What is Pittsburgh?
I don't know that it's
Pittsburgh's not an incorporated town.
Yeah.
Is it just part of like what is it technically?
Oak Creek.
Rock County.
It's Oak Creek.
It's like
Oh, it's just its own.
like
Hey,
in there. Oh.
You're not
No,
Milner's not incorporated.
no, we're anarchy.
Yeah.
But you fall under unincorporated Route County.
Yeah, I just thought Fitchburg was a town. I never
Implement
realized.
things through Route County or Milner.
Fitchburg does not have a town.
And Clark.
And Clark's not a town.
Clark's not a town.
Dang. So when we do our work, we kind of look at it through the lens of like our strategic priorities and like the stoplight document that we came up with. Should we also start looking at like how it fits through the cap as we move forward?
I mean, it's a very good thing for us to be attuned to. You know, I think our program, like our priority areas are structured in very close alignment. I think we go beyond the cap and that we're also thinking about resilience. So the cap itself is an instrument that's focused on emissions reductions, which is really important. But we also say climate action is also investing in resilience strategies. And so in that sense, we have a little bit more, I'd say, lateral kind of scope that's really important. That said, we should all be really informed about what's in the cap, be ready to talk to people about why it's important, talk about how people can get involved. So that's kind of an active role that we should always play, but I don't know that we need to benchmark ourselves, you know, relative to cap implementation. But that said, I think that we'll probably play a pretty strong role in catalyzing and leading and supporting the implementation of the cap too.
Okay.
Because we are structured, you know, based on the expertise that's needed to really move it forward as well.
So like if we were to do like this reforestation project that we just did, could be mentioned as it's also
can definitely be used for accounting. So in the accounting, like as we develop metrics and benchmarking and initiatives that are doing it, that kind of stuff we should be, you know, kind of moving up to an inventory of actions. And so we, at the outset of this project, we're like, how do we measure and record and track progress? And so there's something, you know, government is like, oh, let's in 5 years do a big greenhouse gas inventory and see where we land. And many of us have pushed back against that because we're like, you know, at the granular, like we're tiny, we're not global. So we're very small scale. And the community might invest money and lots of efforts into initiatives and then actually not show, you know, a meaningful difference as a big greenhouse gas inventory. Because a lot of the inventories are based on like pretty gross, you know, assumptions, formulas that you put things into, like how many planes fly into plane excluded. So how many people visit, you know, how many tourists visited in this area and stayed in these places. So they're based on assumptions. And what we think is more meaningful is if you actually track actions and then extrapolate up to emissions reduced by actions or co-benefits achieved through actions. And so use the actions as kind of the marker and the thing that we're tracking. But certainly like the reforestation initiatives, if they're with partner agencies, that should be something that you talk about is like, hey, how should we capture this, you know, number of linear feet or square acres we captured to reforest.
3,400 trees.
And a lot of what the first part of this process was like looking at current initiatives and projects. And so we have now an inventory of that. It was like 180 things, I think, between like all 57 for all the 5 sectors that we're already doing. So I'm going to try to at some point build out part of the website by the sector about that catalogs all of those ways. So we've already been doing climate action work. And so if you guys do have projects that are relevant to these sectors and have some metrics or stories to be shared within those sectors, like that can always be, we're going to try to build out the website now to just be more of a resource, a better resource too. So we don't want to lose all that work that we did, which that was like a couple months of the process. It was just in these monthly meetings talking about the current, what was currently underway. So track all that information too. And if you have any, like, so I also have this monthly newsletter, which does these climate wins and climate actions by each sector. So if there's things that you know about or think about, kind of like you do for the YBSC newsletter, email me with those. And that's just great to have more content to put in there. Particularly the actual items that people can do.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much. Actually, that was very informative. Yeah, thank you for putting in the time to put that together and share with us.
No, it's good. If there are other things, I'm going to be sending, not all of that, but most of that video. So catching things like the managers, or if there's anything else that kind of seemed, need more clarification, let me know. I don't know.
Awesome.
And get people Wednesday night in the room, physical bodies in the room, maybe even mountaintop popcorn.
And free beer.
There's free beer, kombucha,
Pint glasses.
Pint glasses.
Lots of pint glasses.
Lots of pint glasses. But seriously, everyone, it really matters. It'll matter. It'll send a really nice signal if we get a really good attendance. These 10 people each. Just think of that. That'd be 120 people right here. Michelle, you need to lie your network. You need to cast broader than.
Okay, great. So now we'll hear from Ashley Dean and Ryan Messenger, a little bit of background of their work experiences and a little more about what they do at YBSC. Alrighty, take it away, Ashley.
So I'm the Collaborative Initiatives Manager here at YBSC. So as you just heard, most of what I do up to this point has been supporting the work of the collaboratives, doing on the administrative side, the communications, working with the board, and then working pretty closely with Wynn and Tim and Paul and Michelle, sort of steering the direction of the working groups themselves, because a lot of it really does come down to our YBSC project directors, like keeping everyone on track for that particular project and the recommendations coming out of it. And then the other part of what I do here is building up the green business program. So that is a newer area, but something that I'm getting hopefully have a little bit more time for once this process moves on to its next implementations phase. So I started in September, so right when these working groups were getting going as well. So relatively new here still. Moved to Steamboat the summer of 2019 with my family. I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old here, and yeah, my sister's lived here. She's a doctor in town and has been here for about 15, 16 years. So visiting her family, being here with her family. So it was the pull coming here. But prior to that, I guess I'm going backwards in time. How do you want to do this?
However,
yeah, going backwards. Yeah, exactly. I lived basically in the Bay Area for about 20 plus years. I did my undergraduate at Stanford and studied human biology, and then took a year off, went to Jackson Hole, did the ski thing, moved back to San Francisco and worked for a marine conservation nonprofit that also did sort of like eco travel trips. So did marketing communications for them for a year. Helped start a nonprofit organization called Earth Ride, where we did like urban youth education and brought them out snowboarding and mountain biking and surfing, kind of more the non-traditional sports. And then from there, went back down to Stanford and worked for the Center on Environmental Science and Policy, and did more public affairs, communications administration. Kind of wore a lot of hats for that particular role. Was there for about 7 or 8 years, and then went down to Santa Barbara and got a graduate degree in environmental science and management through the Donald Bruns School of Environmental Science and Management, and studied eco-entrepreneurship. So did sort of a thesis on, developed a business plan for ecotourism investment and framework, and met my husband there. And we moved back to San Francisco after that, and ended up going back down to Stanford and working for another center on food security and the environment for another, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, sort of in a similar capacity, but at a higher pay raise after getting the master's degree, which is nice, that helps. But enjoyed that work, but it was a big commute going from the city, and was ready for a little bit of change after that. And so left Stanford, and my parents owned a small, like 1-2 vineyard up in Napa. And so did a little bit of wine growing and wine sales for them for a couple of years while I was having my kids. So it wasn't like a full-time job, but don't recommend going into the wine business because it's impossible to make money. And but you know, you enjoy drinking wine. That's nice. Yeah, so I've those are sort of like my various jobs and experiences. And yeah, and so like I said, we were just ready to make the mountain move, and especially with our kids kind of at that age. And so it's been good. And I kind of I really wanted to do environmental work when I got here, and ideally do something local and not do a remote job, just so I could get more connected with the community, and I don't know, do some work that had a sort of more direct impact that I could see on a day-to-day basis. A lot of what I did at Stanford was a lot of international research, so I wasn't very directly and emotionally invested or tied to the work that we were actually doing. So I wanted to do something that was more local. And so, yeah, my kids were kind of getting to be a little more independent, and this job came up and I applied, and I got here.
Awesome. Cool. Have you followed up with that organization that you helped start? Like, are they still
Earth Ride?
Yeah.
No, I mean, we did it for a few years, and then I needed to like get like a paying job.
Yeah.
And it was just like me and my friend that basically ran it on our own, and sort of, it was just something we did.
Yeah.
On the side. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was good.
What was the eco-tour company?
The ecotourism, like our business plan. It was
Like,
called Coastal Eco Ventures was our company name.
Nice.
But yeah, we sort of did a case study on a development done in an ecotourism development in Mexico, and helped bring them some funding for their development for their project, and sort of created some criteria of how you mark your environmental and social sort of equities, and so developed a tool, and then sort of brought some financing in to help this particular business, but then developed a larger business plan around it.
I was going to ask you, those companies, if you think that they have, if like the pros outweigh the cons of like is it like you're like traveling and so like you're producing emissions as you're like going places, but then it's like the work that you're doing, does that offset? It's just something I've been curious about, because I think it's a really cool idea, but I also like don't know how I feel about it.
Well, it was more like supporting local projects. So this was like a Mexican-owned eco development, and they were very much like very sustainable and trying to hire locally. And
okay.
So it was more just helping support this type of development.
I got you.
So it wasn't. I went down to Mexico like for part of that summer working there, but I wasn't like flying back and forth.
I was thinking that there's like a bunch of like tourists going back and forth.
Well, I mean, tourists definitely are flying back and forth to ecotourism developments like all over the world.
Okay. But it's like a spot that they go to.
Yeah, but what we did, it was sort of like a case study.
Yeah.
And then, built this kind of business plan around that case study. So, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously the catch with travel. You could be going to a sustainable resort, but you still need to get there.
People are going to travel anyways, but
Yeah.
it should be sustainable when they get there.
Yeah. Totally. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ashley. Does anyone else have any other questions for Ashley?
I feel like I just talked for like an hour and I'm exhausted.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm gonna make some posters. Some cards for the event. So
great. Well, yeah, thank you so much for your presentation and for sharing a bit about yourself. Ryan's gonna go next. You're welcome to stay.
I might need to go and get moving on this map stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a busy week.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, thanks.
But yeah, thanks, Ashley. Bye. So Ryan will talk now and give a little bit about his background. Change the. Just start.
I'll just go ahead. So I'll go the other direction that Ashley went. I'll start at the beginning and I'll go here because I can't think backwards. So I grew up in Littleton in Denver, and went to CU Boulder for my undergrad. I studied international affairs, and I didn't really know what I wanted to go to college for, but like that was something I was interested in. So that's kind of the path that I pursued. After college, I moved up to Steamboat for a year, basically being a ski bum. I worked at the Steamboat Grand as a bellman, and saved some money. And my friend and I went and traveled Southeast Asia for 6 months together. And then I split off from him and so we did Nepal and India together. And then I went to New Zealand for a few months on a work visa. And then went to Thailand. And so while I was in Nepal with my friend, this trip was kind of a time for me to think about what I wanted to do in life. And as we were doing this 3-week trek through the Himalayas, and as I was looking around at all the nature, I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I was really impressed with where we were. And I felt like my calling was to get involved in conservation somehow. my grandfather had been involved in the Nature Conservancy, and I was like, yeah, like, I don't know, I feel like that this is like a good path for me. And I didn't even know what that looked like, but kind of serendipitous moment that night after I'd kind of thought about that. We were staying at a guest house, and I talked to this couple who had been to Thailand, and they were telling me about this reforestation like nonprofit that they had volunteered with, and they were like, oh, if you go, you got to go to Thailand, like check this place out. So I looked it up. It's called Conserve Natural Forests, and they actually had an internship program, and I applied and was accepted. So after leaving Nepal and India, I went to New Zealand and worked for 4 months and saved up some more money, and then started my internship at Conserve Natural Forests, which is in Thailand, which is in like the north. And I worked there for 2 months, kind of working on their like I guided the tourists through our planting areas. So they were reforesting their, I think there's 20 or 30 acres of land that they owned, and then they also grew trees for larger planting projects that they actually did with the military. So yeah, I would tell the tourists about like the visitors, everything we were doing. They would plant trees on our property, and then they would also work in our nursery, like planting seeds to grow trees. And I was kind of running all that. So that was kind of my first introduction to like conservation, and then also working with volunteers. So after that, I came back to the US, and I didn't know what I wanted to do still. All I knew was the term reforestation. And so I would type in like reforestation jobs into Google, and nothing really came up except for arborist jobs. And I was like, I don't think this is what I want to do, but like, just go for it. At least I get to be around trees. So I was an arborist for a year, and hated it because I was taking down trees and not planting many. So after a year of doing that, I was just living with a friend in Denver, and still had a lot of flexibility in my life. So I got a work visa to Australia and moved to Australia, and was kind of bumming around for a bit, stayed with this couple who the woman was basically planting a botanical garden like on her property, like all these different plants and trees and stuff. So I learned a lot about planting from her. And then was also volunteering with an organization called Conservation Volunteers, which takes volunteers out onto conservation projects throughout Australia. So I really enjoyed that. I was like, this is something I really love. I love the volunteering aspect. I love the like doing conservation. Moved to Tasmania, worked on a vegetable farm for a bit, and then COVID happened and came home in March of 2020. And when I got back to Steamboat, I like knew I wanted to do something in conservation still. I'd done some work with YVSC in the past. I'd worked on a couple of their retreat events. And our my parents' neighbor, I was staying with my parents at the time, was the had been the interim executive director for YBSC and had helped hire Michelle. And so he suggested I reach out to Michelle. And I told her my interests, and because they were starting to grow at the time, and we had started this reforestation program on the Yampa, she's like, yeah, like, how about you just start, basically just taking care of those trees. Like very basic. I was like a quote intern. But basically I got paid to just go and turn the pump on for the trees like a couple times a week. And I thought that was really cool. I was like, you don't even have to pay me to do this. She's like, no, like this is a job now. You get paid. Like, oh, great. I'm used to volunteering. So that was kind of how I started. And then we started a little bit more of a formal internship format. I started in there, and like, we still had to kind of create a project. And so my project was what has turned into the Yampa Valley Climate Crew, which, if you all don't know, is our program that takes volunteers out on climate action projects throughout the Yampa Valley. So I did that kind of part-time my first summer, as well as, well, I guess my second summer. So I did climate crew and was taking care of trees. And then was working at the hotel over the winter. And then last year I was full-time over the summer and was taking on a little bit more responsibility with the Yampa River Forest Restoration Program, helping to plant retree, and then also still working with volunteers. And so now I'm full-time, and it seems like my responsibilities grow all the time. So yeah, now I am the Natural Climate Solutions Projects Manager. So basically any projects that YVSC does that address natural climate solutions, it's a project that I'm running for the most part. Tim has a couple projects that he's involved in that I'm not so much involved in. But yeah, so I now pretty much fully run the Yampa River Forest Restoration Program. I'm also planning a wet meadow restoration project in California Park this year, which I've kind of taken over from the Forest Service. Macy is helping to create the monitoring protocol for that project, which is really cool. And then on top of that, I'm still planning climate crew events, which we just had one last week, which is the reforestation project. So yeah, my path to where I'm at now has kind of been all over the place. A little bit of luck, a little bit of just talking to the right people at the right time. My advice is, I mean, always keep in contact with people that you feel could be helpful to you at some point in your career, because you never know when you're going to run back into them. Just take any opportunity you can. I think what you all are doing with this internship program is a really important first step. Technically, I started as an intern here too. Internships look really good on resumes, and I think you can all learn a lot from our staff as well. Yeah, even just like doing work, I think the two important things in life are to figure out what you want to do and to figure out what you don't want to do. And so maybe with this kind of work, there are going to be some things that really speak to you and excite you. And then there might be some things where you're like, wow, I hated that and I never want to do that again. And then you know that that's something that you can stay away from, and that's equally as important. So yeah, I have a little bit more of an interesting career path than some others. I'm also getting my master's degree right now, which I started last fall, in ecological restoration from CSU, which is online, which is very nice that I can be working on my career and not have to pack up and move to Fort Collins or something to do that. So yeah, since I didn't study ecology or biology or environmental science or anything, this is kind of my background on the work that I've been doing, that I've just learned everything from the field. So now I get to learn it from classroom, which is really important. There's just some things that you don't get until you're in a classroom. So that's me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I love talking about myself, so.
What did you do? What was your job in New Zealand?
Let's see, what did I do? I was a bartender at an English pub.
Very nice.
I learned how to pour Guinness the correct way. Yes. And then you can do a little clover leaf on the top of the foam. So that was one of the things I learned, life lesson. And then I also trimmed Christmas trees.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. There was a couple that ran a nonprofit Christmas tree farm in the top of the North Island, and I spent a few weeks trimming Christmas trees.
That's so nice. And where did you live in Australia?
I was in Brisbane staying with, you were in Australia, right? Yeah. So I was in Brisbane for 8 weeks staying with that couple. And then I moved to Tasmania and lived in, it's called Forth, which is just a little town. It's closer.
How is Tasmania compared to Brisbane?
Much better.
Really?
Yeah. Tasmania is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm actually bummed because I was saving to do like a big 2 or 3 week trip around the island after I'd finished work, and COVID hit and I didn't have time to do that. So
were you there what part of the year? in this?
In Tasmania.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there from October to March, which is a hot time for them. But even then, it was never incredibly hot. I mean, it was like maybe low hundreds a few days, but like they're pretty south, so it's not as bad as like north of Australia where it's like 130 degrees.
That whole experience sounds like amazing.
Yeah.
Southeast Asia sounds like so cool.
Yeah,
like Nepal is like bucket list.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, depending on your situation, there's really no better time than right after college to go and do something like that.
I know a lot of people. Thailand is so popular for going. Like
Thailand's a very easy place to travel.
Yeah, I just went there for 3 months right out of high school.
Yeah, and you can you get a 1-month visa, and then you have to make a run to the border every month. And basically, people that were living in Pai, where I was, you would take a bus. It's like 2 hours to the Myanmar border. You basically cross the border and then cross back into Thailand, and then it restarts your visa, and then you get 30 more days.
Cool.
And you can pretty much do that indefinitely. I met people that were working from home and lived there basically because
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Nice.
So yeah, would highly suggest traveling if your situation allows you to. It gives you more perspective on your life, what you want to do. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Tyler, any questions or anything?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. I'm an open book, so just let me know if you ever want to talk. I love chatting.
So thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop recording.